Here's the world that we've been making so far the last few weeks. We have our wondrous characters that are running around on fire, some landscapes, just a whole bunch of craziness, right? Just a bunch of nonsense. I love that area right there. That's pretty cool. It's like a fungus. So I want to talk a little bit about some materials that the material node editor, and then start really flexing it out. Okay, first we're going to start with just creating colors and materials from math, and then I'm going to show you how to change different instances of that through parameters, and then we're going to jump onto using textures from like Google image search and really pushing these physically based rendered materials as far as they can go for real-time render. Okay, so I'll keep everything organized in my assets folder. I want to have a folder for my materials, and then when I go into this level and I right click, I'm going to say material. The general nomenclature is to start off with a capital M underscore, so M underscore, and I'm going to call this one base color. I'm going to create a base material that I'm going to create a bunch of different versions of and show you why that's important and why it can save you a lot of time down the road. Okay, so this is the material node editor. Let's take a little tour of our world. This is the one node that all your kind of things will go into in the end. You have all the different functions and math and everything like that you can do here, which is also available by right-clicking. And then you have your details panel. The details panel right now is about this this base material node, and you can preview how we change things. It'll be updated in here. And the first thing is the blend mode. It's opaque, which means you can't see through it. We're going to talk about opaque, maybe get into masked today, probably not masked, and then translucent, which we will talk about today. Okay, masked means that you can use white or black levels, 0 or 1, to create areas where it's fully transparent, so that you can do things like have a hole inside of a wall or something like that. Really simply, that's often used for like eyelashes or something, right? You don't want to use geometry for something like that. You use just a general one plane mesh, and then you use transparency to turn off and on the areas where you would have hair. And then we are then going to let's go ahead and start ahead. So a color for us to use right now could either be an RGB or it could be an RGB with an alpha. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to start with just an RGB, and that is 3 values, and that's called a 3 vector. So we're going to use a 3 vector that's a constant. It doesn't change. I'm going to hold down the 3 button. I'm going to click. Basically, I'm bringing up a color tile, and that's all I'm saying. Is that we now have a way of changing color of our material. Let's connect it to the base color and give it a color. Say OK. It has to compile, and then we have blue. All right. So this is our base material. And then if I want to make a green one, then I can make a new material that's green and make a new material that's red. And then I just have to assume that I know what the colors are, because it takes a while to compile these, especially as they get really complicated. You can imagine that every time I hit compile, then I know you've seen on your laptops when you like open a new world, it says shaders compiling. You're like, I'll come back in an hour. This is that kind of process, right? It's building these materials. So as I kind of mentioned before, game engines are late. Well, they're not really lazy. They just try to always try to run the least amount of processes, right? I joke they're lazy, and you have to like tell them, no, you have to take out the trash. No, you have to take out the trash, or you don't get your allowance, right? So today we're going to say, you can't be lazy about this color. This color I want to change in real time. I want to be able to dial it in within my scene, okay? So I'm going to convert this to a parameter just by right-clicking on it, and I've said parameter, which I can give a namespace to, okay? This parameter is now called, easy enough, it's called color. Oops, let's get rid of that. Back here, it's called color. If I zoom in, you can see that now it's called color, but the parameter is now these values of R, G, and B. Okay, it also has an A as well now. Okay, so to start off with, since we're going to make a base color, and I want to use this parameter and drive it in real time to make instances of it, let's make it white so it's pretty generic. That's not the whitest white. There we go. That's the whitest white I can think of. There we go. So see, it took a little while to compile. We're going to try to basically say, can you allocate some memory for this so that it can render in real time? So we're going to go back here to this base color. I'm going to right click on it, and at the top, create a material instance. Okay, this is an instance of a material. And then I'm going to rename it blue, because I know I'm going to go blue. And I'm going to open it up, and you're going to see it's a different interface. All our boxes and lines have disappeared, right? It's a much simpler, streamlined thing where you can really focus on what the color is at hand or what the material is at hand. Thank you. It's especially you can see if you had two monitors, it'd be also really great right now. And what's cool is that right here, that's that parameter we just made. And as we continue to make new parameters, they'll be updated in this list of vector parameters, which are 3 parameters driven at once that are appended to each other, and scalar parameters, which are single values. Okay. So right now it's using white. Let's go ahead and put something in the scene. Let's put in 3 somethings. Spheres work for us. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and I'm going to apply this instance right here, and this guy we're going to now watch. I'm not rendering anything like that. I'm not playing. I can just right now say, let's dial this in. And it's changing in real time. So now it's in its environment, and it can actually render in real time. Okay? So I can dial into blue. That's easy enough. There we go. And in the same way, I can create another one for red and one for green. And you'll see that I created it off of the base each time. I can make an instance of an instance, and then we're getting into the whole inception thing. But for right now, we're just going to keep it simple. And each one is an instance of the base. All right, so green. And then I can dial in real time. It can actually be done while we're rendering. So I can say, go ahead and simulate. And if these guys are like running around, right, doing their thing, and all the while that's happening in the background, I can dial this into green. Oh, but it also helps to put the materials on the thing you're actually looking at inside the real world. There we go. And let's put the red one in there. And double click on the red. Save. And then I was simulating when that happened. That's fine. Now we apply it back on. And there we go. So now you've seen why we make instances, right? You got these huge complex materials, and I just want to change one thing about each one. I don't want to make the whole thing from scratch. I want to copy paste all those nodes. This is a way of dialing in different settings, and you have like the most coolest water in the world. If you want to use it in subtle ways, make those all parameters that can be driven, right? So that makes sense. Now let's edit our base and show how that then permeates out to the instances, okay? I don't know, does anyone know what a Fresnel lens is? You ever heard of Fresnel? It's spelled Fresnel. Yeah. So Fresnel, or Fresnel, is a kind of thing that was, it's an effect that has been done, it's a shader effect that used to be not be able to be rendered in real time. And now we can do it with modern graphics cards and software and stuff like that. So I'm going to show you how to guys use a Fresnel lens. And what it is, it's an extremely thin lens, often used in like lighthouses and stuff like that. And what it is it's so thin that you don't see it in the center. And only with the incidence angle, only when you see it from the edge, do you start seeing that it's actually there. So it's kind of a gradient of either color or opacity or something like that. Okay, so it's a really cool thing that's just math inside of the game engine that can get you going really, really far, really, really quick. So we're just gonna do a color for now, right now, and we're gonna make basically the the inside color of each of these like black or white or something like that. So I'm gonna go to the base color. And I'm just going to type in Fresnel, and it's a function there that has some values. If I look on the left, you can see that exponent is 5, and base reflection is also 0.04. Okay. And then when I hook this up to the color, I'm going to start talking about these other parameters here, just to let you guys see what they look like as we kind of mess around with them. Okay. So the base color is this parameter, and it's already been overwritten in my instances. This is already a green, a red, and a blue, so I'm not going to change this. but then I'm going to put in another color, and then I want to interpolate between them and use them as a gradient. So from one to the other. And linear interpolation is called lerping. So I'm going to type in linear. I'm going to spell it correctly this time. I'm going to type in linear. And I see I have a linear interpolate, otherwise known as a lerp. And if I just put them in, they'll already be halfway between each other. But I'm going to use this as the alpha. So I think I'm going to put this one as the A. No, it's the other way around. As the B. Oh, it has to come out of here. There we go. And so I'm going to flip it back the way I thought it was originally. So this is just the easiest way to see it. So now we have a white rim around a black object in the center, right? So we've now created a gradient that could be kind of cool. And what's going to happen is that if we save this, and we come back to our world, all of our instances have now changed. We've changed the base, it's propagated through to all our instances. So now we can see how we can make, same way we can make classes, the objects of those classes. This is a way of working smarter, not harder, right? And in the same way, I could change this to white. And because it's not being overridden in the instance parameters, here we don't see anything, but here we'll have to save it. Now we see something. Okay, that one looks particularly cool. And it's about incidence angle. No matter which way I look at it, it's always the outside. That's why I was using spheres, because it really showcases it over like cubes and stuff like that. Great. So what I want to show you now is, because we now have these colors on the inside, really quickly, metallic, like what this would change would be like, maybe if these are all 0 to 1s, and if I want to look very metal, right? How metallic, how metal-like, and we're not talking about like metal, we're talking about, how metal-like. We're going to drop this in as a single parameter. There's 1. And now let's make it metal looking. Right? This now has like a chrome kind of feel to it, right? Just using a little math. And then if we come down here to roughness, we can imagine that it would be like a matte surface, like this. HMD is like a very rough material, right? But if it were to make it no rough, make it very smooth, what would that be? Well, that would be pretty much a mirror. And now we have a mirror, and it's reflecting the skybox, right? Actually, let's see what this looks like inside the world. Right? Super powerful, super quick. Let's watch Henry run around inside of it. You have to optimize that a little bit better. Where are you, buddy? I'm seeing through it. I just see this chair. It doesn't go that far. That's a little bit stretched. Doesn't be reflected that far out. We could probably change some materials and some parameters to make it render better. Anyway, so I'm going to stop and take these off real quick. While it's cool, it's not what I really want to do. I'm holding down Alt and just clicking these things to get rid of them. I'll keep them around. They're not hurting me. But I don't need them for right now. Okay. And then we have these values right here. We have the exponent, and basically that's how far that gradient goes in and out, right? We can make it less of a gradient, more of a gradient. I'm going to make it a parameter. By default, it was 5. But I right-click on it and I say convert to parameter, and call this the exponent. Right, this is the curve of that. And now, when we come back to our orange, which is pretty much the easiest one to see, right? We now have a new one, a new scalar parameter called exponent. And we can watch this change in real time. right? So you can see these things grow, and you see I can really dial in settings. Cool. Now let's go a little bit into the other settings. We have an emissive color. This is super cool. This is what like Unreal's kind of known for, is this emissive look. I mean, games in general do this kind of stuff. But not only can it be the color of our Fresnel, but it's not just a 0 to 1 number. It could be overdriven. And I'm going to call this one glow. And then I'm going to multiply. Holding down M and clicking. Then if I multiply it by 0, what do we have? 0. Yeah, so it's not emissive at all. But if I took out the base color, it would be black. But if I multiply it by, you know, a larger value, let's say, let's look at it and drive it live, right? So let's make this called glow. Let's actually make it called glow. There we go. We're having fun with math. Who knew? And then let's go into this world. Everything should look like it was because we're multiplying it by 1. And I open up the instance. Now I have glow. And enable it. It's like an unlit, right? There went all the shadows, right? Because I left this as a 0. I want it to be a 1, which is an unlit texture, right? It can't take shadows because it's like a glowing thing. All right. Now let's see where we can take this. Who wants to put in it? What number should we use? Just gonna drive it. Let's take it for a drive. All right. Isn't that a cool transition that we can really get into? Now, it's kind of subtle, and because I have, oh yeah, I forgot about, I'm already busy. It's like a delicious gobstopper. Because you really can't see it that well, maybe I've already changed it, but I want to point out that as we've changed some of these light settings, and I think I might have done it last week, it often helps to set the exposure. Okay, so there's an automatic exposure by default. I don't know if you guys are into cameras and stuff, but basically, just like when you walk outside, your irises on your eyes adjust, and you're like, oh, it's too bright, and then you can like, oh, I can see now. Unreal does the same thing by default. Just try to make everything look nice. And when you're playing with parameters like glow or lighting intensity, it's often good to fix it at a base, and that way it's a little bit more dramatic, as it's a more of a linear. Ooh, inverted was really cool too. They inverted the color. Got a quasar there or something. Cool. So what I want to show you now is how to. Well, actually, let's show you transparency first, and then we'll show you driving this in real time while the game engine is running. So the Fresnel can also be used to. Let me just kind of copy this. I could use it. I can use the same one, but I'm going to use a different one. I'm going to hold down Control W to duplicate. And this can be our, let's do a transparent materials. Now, introduce the idea of transparency, which can also be a 0 to 1, right? If it's completely invisible, I give it a 0, and now we don't see anything there. They've all turned off. But if I go into opacity with this, and I make this one black, everything that's white will be all the way there. Everything that's black will be invisible. So now I've introduced the idea of transparency, where this is 1 white, and this is black and 0. Right? So let's go back and look at it. Let's save it first. Yes, sir. So we have a gradient on opacity and a gradient on color. So now we have these floating glass orbs. And maybe I want to be able to see them a little bit better. So I'll take this number and kind of make it a little less dramatic. There we go. So now I can see them a little bit better. Cool. So that's just like using a little bit of math, and we've already gotten pretty far. Okay? And then let's go ahead and see this happening in real time. Okay? So let's get in the blueprints. I'm going to do it in a level blueprint, just kind of keep it simple, and I'm just going to do glow. Okay? So I'm going to select this. This is my favorite orb. I'm going to select it and go into my blueprints. And because of the context-sensitive nature of using blueprints, I'm going to be able to right-click this and bring in a reference to the sphere. And then on Event Begin Play, as soon as we hit the play button, I want to now also allocate memory to this for this being driven in real time at runtime. And what it's called is a dynamic material instance, or instanced dynamic material. So drag off sphere, and I say create, and right down there it says create dynamic material instance. Sounds really complicated, right? But we understand it. It's an instance of material, and it's going to be driven at runtime, so it's dynamic instanced material, right? It just sounds convoluted. You can use it as a cocktail party if you want to sound smart. But we know it's just making cool things in the image. So what is our material? Well, we've already set one on there, but I can always override it. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I'm calling it base color red. I'm just going to look here for red. And then this has done nothing. All this has done nothing visually. This is basically just allocating the same material on there. It's just a thing we have to do first. You need to tell it immediately, get ready, this thing's going to go. When is it going to go? We don't know, but get ready, it's going to go. Okay? When is it going to go? Well, we can do it when we're overlapping, we're throwing things on there. I'm not actually going to use my controller just yet, so I'm just going to do it after a certain amount of time. So after 2 seconds, it's a little delay. After 2 seconds, I want you to set the scalar parameter. Not that one. Of this guy. Add a little. There's these things called reroute nodes. If you like to keep organized, there you go. And now we can come up here and say set scalar parameter. There we go. And what was it called? It was called glow. And the default value, wrong one. The default value that we have for it is like 1 or whatever. After 2 seconds delay, let's make it something ridiculous, like 10,000, just to make sure we know we're doing it. And let's prove that it's right. Okay, this could be on event overlap, on key presses, whatever. We're now seeing that we're driving it. But I really want to see it glow like I was doing when I was, finagling with the slider. I want to see it, sun gradually get brighter and overtake the world or whatever. So there's a really, really, really handy node inside of Blueprints, and it's called the timeline. This is a way of doing little curves, little tiny little curves. Inside of Blueprints, okay? So if I open it up, it can do 4 things. It can be a float track, so it's doing 1 value. A vector track, so it can like drive colors or locations, right? X, Y, Z's real time, so it can like make something go up and down. If you want to have a levitating platform, this can be what's driving that, okay? This exclamation point is an event track, means it can send out certain events that can trigger certain things. On a timeline, I want this to happen over 5 seconds and 10 seconds. Instead of using a bunch of delay nodes, I can actually do it like a nonlinear editor and drag it around. This color track is really cool. You can create gradients this way, so you can have lights pass through different colors and stuff. Right now, we're just going to do a simple float. Right? We're going to right-click and add a little keyframe. And this is right now by default it's 5 seconds long. That's fine with me. So from 1 from time 0, a value of 1. And then I'm just going to make a keyframe anywhere, highlight it, and say at time 5, make it a value of, what was it, 10,000? And then let's compile. And then use these little buttons right here so we can zoom to fit, zoom to fit. There it is, the little line. And what's it called? It's called new track 0. That's fine with me. And there it is. So these are your execution nodes, right? Execute at the beginning, wait 2 seconds, then start playing, and then update all the way through. It's going to continue at the frame rate, bang out like 90 frames per second until it gradually goes over 5 seconds to glow. So we wait. Well, it beat me. Let's see what we're doing. Let's see what we did wrong. Oh, I didn't connect him. Cool. Let's do it. Oh my goodness. You see there's a little pop there where it goes from transparent to so bright that it can't be transparent anymore. That might be something we get into a little bit later about forward rendering. So that's great. While we have we have a little bit of time left, I'm going to jump into the wild world of Google Images. This is a website called Google. I don't know. I'll put a week 4 Slack for you. We have. I'm going to search for what's a material. What's something people like to touch? You like touch something that has a weird texture or a texture you like. Something that's rough. Something rubber. Rubber could be a good one. Something with a pattern. Something with like a texture. Velvet has texture. A little bit more patterny, like sandpaper. Was that what you said? Yeah. Sandpaper? Sandpaper has a little more coarseness, right? You can probably see that. Let's just do like maybe sand, right? Let's do maybe like a microscope version of sand. Microscopic sand. So this is what sand looks like under a microscope. Let's see if we can find one that's compact enough. Actually, let's see if we can find one that's tileable. So when you're looking for textures, you want to make sure that if you put a bunch of them next to each other, they tile up. That looks like it would work pretty well. If that was tileable, that'd be pretty cool. You have to kind of prove it. I'm not quite sure. That one looks pretty good too. This one looks like fun. But let's find a certain size. So usually you'll see these textures, which we haven't really talked about textures yet, are usually powers of 2. Right? They're square, and they're usually allocated for memory as 256 by 256, 1024 by 1024, 2048 by 2048. Pretty much a sweet spot for us, because we're not getting too close to it, is we want to look for the size of exactly 1024 by 1024. And now these are all like, they're ready for us. Like, oh, you're making a game texture. I understand. We got it for you. This is ready to go. I think this one will be the best one right now that I see, if it's tileable, which probably is. Yeah, seamless texture. Let's view the image. And then I want to put this in my, I'm going to make an imports folder. So I'm not simulating. I'm going to find where my project is. This is a cheat way by saying show in Explorer. And now here's my project. And whenever I make projects, not only do I use the projects, the folders they give us, I also make my own folder called imports. And this keeps all my models and stuff like that so I can find them later on. So you're not like searching through emails and stuff. Okay. This import is a texture. And I might call this one just beach. And this is the color. Alright. Let's go ahead and bring it in and see what it looks like. Okay. So now back at my content assets, I am making textures. And import. I can import it through using the imports button, or also, since I know that it's right here, I can also just drag it into this content browser. Cool, there it is. And then I can right click on it, and as we've seen before, when you right click on things, the things you can make out of it are often at the very top. Create a material out of it, which is going to be called msand. But I don't want my textures folder. I'm going to keep it organized and move it to my materials folder. There it is. So msand is hanging out with all these Fresnel textures, and msand is going to go on. I think the ground is a good place for the msand. And it is indeed tileable, but it looks very flat, right? It's not very convincing. It has a plasticky look to it, and it really looks like it's not pro. I'm going to show you a quick way of making this look pro. Okay? There's two pieces of software. One of them is free for Mac, and it's called Crazy Bump. All right, and then there's another company that makes a thing called Substance Designer. If you want to do textures pro, this is the company. It's called Algorithmic, and it actually plugs into Unreal. You might have seen Substance Designer. You can make amazing textures. You basically kind of paint things on, and it's really what everyone uses for making amazing textures. Right? It's also a node-based editor. Another piece of software you can always learn. They have a free thing called Substance Bitmap to Material. This is actually going to turn a single texture image from Google Image Search to a physically based rendered, really compelling material shader using PNGs or whatever kind of file format you want to use. I'll put this, I think it's free. It might be just free, but it might just be free with your NYU EDU. Just sign up with your NYU account. And I'll put this in week 4 for you so you'll find it. And download it. I already have it installed. Search bitmap to material. And all I'm going to do is take this colored material that I've already imported into it literally says drop a bitmap here. We're going to load it into the main input. And now it's already created this much more compelling material. It's still only 6 polygons, so it's no geometry change, but this has gotten us a lot closer. You can imagine with a little bit of geometry tweaking, this could be even better. This is a really, really great way of getting a little bit more bang for your buck with doing materials. Now, there's one thing that we haven't really talked about, and I'll make the materials, and they'll bring them in Unreal. I'll talk about normal maps, okay? So let's just go ahead. I mean, that's all. I'm just going to export it. This software you can spend. There's some great tutorials, like a 20-minute tutorial shows you how to do all this stuff. You can add grunge, you can paint in things, you can really add more randomness. It has a lot of power. I'm just using the default setting. I hit export. Nothing else. All right. So I'm going to browse to the project imports, put it there, and then I want them all to be PNGs is fine with me. Targa files is what Unreal exports as. It's uncompressed. PNGs is fine for what we're doing. We're not getting too close. And then I know that we only use some of these, and like this is exporting for every game engine, every kind of 3D package. And I know Unreal only uses a few of these, but we'll just export all of them. We'll see that they'll be just empty values if they don't apply to Unreal. Okay, so we're gonna export all these. Then export. Chug, back, close, done. We grabbed our stuff and we got it out of there. Cool, and it's made all these automatically. Let's bring them into the engine so we can see what they're doing. Again, I can import them by hitting the imports button, or I can just drag all of them and just say alley-oop. There you go. And then notice this one's a normal map. Yeah, it sure is. And the normal map right here is this cool material that's kind of like this like a purple pink thing. And this is actually kind of in the way that when we bake lighting, we're finding out the incidence angle of all the polygon facets and finding out which way they would bounce light and shadows to. This is a cheap way of faking it, of telling you how it would do it if it had polygons there. This is a way of adding a little bit of depth and a little bit of shadow into your image. And there's argument and analysis that it doesn't work in stereoscopic rendering. Therefore, it actually is ineffective in VR because it's a fake. And we can actually see that because we can see from 2 different angles at the same time, and we see that it's faked. But it does work on the screen. So that we get into a little bit more depth if you want to. But it's essentially the red and no, it's a red and green channel being driven without green, and you can actually like make it audio reactive and make it have fake depth if you want to drive those two channels at once. Yeah.
So the reflection on this color gives the appearance of a shadow.
Of incidence of light hitting it. Okay. Yeah. And which you can see, like, you know, this is how it's kind of about shadows and light, right? But we also have another channel that's combined with all that stuff, and it's called ambient occlusion. And this is baked in shadows that no matter how well we light it, will always be dark. Okay? And I'm just going to plug them in so you can see them. So we see that a lot of these didn't yield us anything, and that's because they're not built for this game engine. But we can bring in the ones that did something. Barely specular. Roughness, normal, height. Let's bring in specular. We'll take a look at it in a second. Actually, let's double click on it and see. Nope. So specular is kind of like how light glints off it. It's a tiny little white at the tip of peaks and stuff like that. And then because we don't have a plastic material, it didn't really show up. Let's bring these in for the final magic trick. There we go. And then I think I might be able to down T and click. No. Try again. I have to go back to make sure I'm selecting them again. If I hold down T and click, no, it didn't work. Sometimes it brings it in. It just brought in one of them. So I'm just going to drag them in. There they are, all in a row. And let's plug them in where they go. Alright, so this one, look down here, it's the ambient occlusion, and ambient occlusion is down here. And then this one is the roughness. The roughness goes right there. This one is the normals. Normals go right here. And then this one is the height map, and that'll go right here in the world position offset. Save. And already it's looking a lot better. And let's go take a look at it inside the world. I think the world's a little bit bright. And it has just a little bit more of effect, right? Doesn't look like that plasticness that we had before, and it has a little more depth. It might be better on its own sphere, right here. Test it out. It adds a little bit more 3D geometry looking things without actually adding 3D geometry, right? So this is a way of making something that is only a few polygons look like it has a whole bunch of polygons. And it's a fun little trick. All right. So with the last bit of time, I'm going to show us how to make our own pawn. I had to discuss the pawns that are part of the VR template because they're there, and they are kind of complex. So if I didn't show you guys an easy way to substitute out those grabbable objects that we might have gotten lost in them, but I think that actually dissecting those pawns a little bit too difficult. I want to make one with you guys from scratch so that we know how to make our own and see what is actually the components that are essential for rendering the correct camera height and getting ourselves little motion controller hands. Okay, so let's go into our blueprints, and then instead of making a class blueprint, we're going to make a pawn. And the difference between a pawn and a class is that it has that box that says I can possess it. I can make this player 0. Okay, so a pawn, it calls BP VR, and if anyone plays games, they'll know that pawn should always be spelled PWN. All right. And everything seems familiar from before, right? This is like variables and all that kind of stuff. We have a viewport and event graph right here, but the details are different because the class settings are dictated that this is a pawn class, and right here at the very top, it's very important, these pawn controls, that we can make this by default player 0. Okay, and then what do we need? We need to basically have a camera and have a pivot that can pivot it any way direction we want. We want to have motion controllers, okay? So we're going to add that pivot first the camera's going to go on. And that's just an empty scene root. And we're going to call it VR origin. Great. Basically, this is at the ground, this scene root, that's where we place it. And this origin is about to be set up for the match to Oculus, okay? And we're going to do that by, we're going to add the camera so we can render something. I'm not seeing it. Search for it. Camera. And because I had VR origin selected when I added the component, this is parented to that. If I had had this selected, the camera would have been parented to scene root. And then, you know, the hierarchy is just what drives it, right? If I have something like this moves, that thing will move too. So the origin is what will be offset for rendering at our height. And then the camera height will be what does the rendering. And then the event begin graph on the event begin play, I'm going to set the what was that? Set play. 1 second, I always forget this. We'll take a look real quick. We'll cheat, and we'll see what it was, and this one. And this is what we were changing in our settings. I sent the email to everyone that, or the Slack message to everyone that you could change where the floor height is, and that is in the motion controller pawn. Right? I said to change Oculus Rift, which was a problem yesterday while I was in the last week I was on the floor. The API for Oculus actually changed, and it's looking for the text Oculus HMD. So now I've guided you through fixing that in case you're seeing that error. And we want to set the tracking origin. That's what the word is. So inside of our custom one, we want to set tracking origin. And because we're doing a 6-off experience with the floor, we want to be floor level. We can also auto detect for which headset. Right now we're using Oculus, so this is fine. So by using this and going into VR preview, we can already see that we are now, don't crash on me, baby, at the correct height in the world. Actually, we're not. I fixed the other pawn. What I didn't do is put this pawn in the world. Let's find it in the content browser. There we are. We'll put the world next to our little spheres so we can check them out in VR. Let's make it a little bit low. Let's get it above the ground. And let's find the other one we have. Let's get rid of it, which is fixed now, which is good. And this one we already said it was player 0 within the blueprint, but we can also override that and turn that off and on. And let's go ahead and hit play. Here are some of these extra ones. And now I've made my own custom pawn that's rendering at the correct height. Okay? And this one has no WASD, it has nothing. This is just a room scale pawn. This is Rose and I. We've just made the Rose and I pawn. We're just walking around in a room scale environment. And if I want to go see these guys closer, I got to come over and look at them. Right? That's what we've created. But what if I want to poke them? Let's get some motion controller hands in there. And it's super simple. Literally, we say I want it to be on the root. Now we want it to say motion controller. And we'll designate between left and right. This is my left one. And on the details it says which hand? Left hand. Alright. And then let's go back to the root again. Motion controller. And this is my right hand. Okay? But it's invisible. It's just a data tracking point, right? If I had the chaperone, which is in there as well, if I want to add in that blue net around me, that's the chaperone, right? Which I could see the controllers when it got to the edge. It kind of makes an indentation inside of it. But I want to be able to see them as a mesh, so I'm going to control the left, control click the, just regular click the left one, and I'm going to bring in a static mesh, which I like the cone. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the other hand. Static mesh, and cone, regular material, whatever. I mean, we have so many cool Fresnels now. We can definitely give a Fresnel a handle if we want to, but let's keep it visible. I can also give this a better name if I want to. L. And then one thing I didn't do was on my motion controller right. I didn't say it was my right hand. Let's make it right hand. And this is going to be static mesh right. Cool. And then in the world, I see those hands are going to be huge, right? I know from experience that I thought 0.2 was pretty good. So let's select them both. 0.2. And that I also don't want them to face up. I want them to face forward so I can skewer things. There we go. Let's hit play. Look at my hands. Right? That's great. That's how easy it is. And these already have collision space on them, so now I can start hitting overlaps and changing these colors over timelines, right? So now, you know, we have a representation of self that is interactive, right? We've seen how to do that. And what's cool about this, and I'm not going to have, let's try. We're going to now put me on rails, and then I'm going to try to swing at things as I'm going through the world and have an impact as I'm setting a linear path through this world, okay? So this is where Unreal really excels as a game engine, is that it has a thing called a sequencer, and it's basically they're turning the game engine into a non-linear editor. Whereas before you'd have video assets that you're lining up, now we're having just camera angles lining up, or pawns lining up. We can cut between different pawns. We could be this person over here, then cut to another thing, and all the effects are happening. So might as well just jump into it so you see it happening, and we'll see how far we get in like 10 minutes, okay? All right, let's just keep on going. So, right next to blueprints, cinematics, level sequencer, whatever, we can call it new level sequencer, we can call it narrative on rails. Cool. And then now we have a sequencer. I'm going to kind of parent these all kind of together. There we go. Okay, so my sequencer, there it is. It has little ticks. It's 30 frames per second, and it seems to last 150 frames. So that's 5 seconds, right? So it seems to, you know, be a playhead that I can drag along and some play buttons. All right. So let's get this started and see what we can do with it. We can add tracks. You could do things like just like we had the timeline. This has everything the timeline can do, but it does a lot more. It could drive other timelines. Some interesting things would be maybe like a fade track. This could actually fade in and out from black to white, or black to full transparency, or full visibility. Sorry. We have some other parameter tracks. Like we imagine putting some of these material parameters into here. What I'm going to do is just everything that's in my world everything that's a level could be a level track. Okay. Really, really simple. Where's a cube? Where is this thing right here? This small statue, I'm going to make it movable. I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to say start at your location, which it already is put in there for me. Add in a keyframe for Z. Remember, Z is up, and over here, come back down, and then over here, I want you to be up here. Keyframe. It's going to now animate here over 5 seconds. Super quick, right? And for those of you familiar with curve editors, it's going to do it on a gradient, right? Which we have all the different keyframe parameters to make it linear and constant, all that kind of stuff. Get rid of the keyframe editor, and there we are. So, but as you can imagine, you can have a bunch of these. So by default, this right here, this narrative on rails doesn't automatically play. We can do it in Blueprint, so we can have a bunch of them that play after another after another. For our benefit right now to get going, we're going to autoplay. And then let's get into our pawn. And Right? It took a little time to get started, so it went up and it went down. If we want to make this last longer, let's just drag this out a little bit. We want it to last for 300 seconds or maybe 600 seconds. So that's 20 seconds. Sorry, 600 frames. And then we could just drag them over. There it is. Snapping is on. That's that magnet. So right there. And then we want to go to 300. There it is. Ah. Okay. I'm watching it go. Slowly now. So what's cool about this is that guy right there, our pawn. There he goes, our pawn. Let's drag it in there too. Okay? Where do we want to start? Let's start at the beginning. And see with my pawn selected, it sees the camera in there. I'm going to pin that so I always see where my pawn is going. And let's set it up so we're doing a fly through of this world. I start at one end. Here we go. We're here. Keyframe on. We need to add a track. It doesn't have a default track because there's so many things we can do with it. We can add camera shake and we can do other things with different components that are inside of there. We're going to add a transform track. We just care about location. We're going to add a keyframe for location here at the beginning. And then we're going to go to the end. And where do we want to end up? We want to end up on the other side of the world, high above our sconce island. Let's just drag these two. There we go. Bring it over. And maybe we just miss it, right? Right there. Cool. And we're going to add another keyframe because we're at the end. And now this is actually every tick of every frame, right? Tick, 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 tick. So you get an idea what the velocity is, and you can see that actually one thing we've talked about is that this is not a consistent velocity. This is a curve. So if I go into my curve editor, we can see that actually I'm not doing consistent velocity. I'm actually starting slow, speeding up, and then slowing back down. Make that linear. And now tick ticks are all completely even. All right, that's that quick little thing. And we can see that by watching here, hopefully, let's take this one off and this one. Let's now go back to the beginning. Yeah. I don't know why this sphere is connected to me. We'll deal with it in a second. Oh, is that just the scene root? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so while watching my little camera path, I see that I go through the ground right here. So let's just finesse that a little bit and bring it up. Add a keyframe for location. Cool. And then let's go forward a little bit. Well, we want to go back down here, right? Because we want to be able to swipe at all these guys with our new fancy controllers. Is that a keyframe there? Move forward. Watch the thing happen. Right there, we better get up or we're going to hit the ground. Cool. Sliding forward. A little bit more maybe. Oops. And then I'm cool that's going through a bush. And then we'll end up right here. Maybe go back down a little bit, go closer. Cool. Keyframe that again. You guys ready? All right. I'm ready. I'm going to take a big swipe at all those lights. Here we go. Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. Give me some lights. Oh, no, too high. Up too high. Ah. What's up? There we go. And then we ended up here. All right, that was fun. I gotta make it work. We're so close. We're so close. Wherever it is when it gets here, this needs to be on the ground. So let's go to that closest thing. I'm going to use this arrow, cut back over there, and let's make this on the ground. Because remember that it knows that we're at floor level, and it's going to make my sitting height go back up. So I'm going to put it on the ground right here. Okay, we're going to adjust this. And one more time. Cool. Yeah. I'm getting closer. But we're out of time. So we have 3 minutes left, so I can still make this work. Alright, it's a race against time. I think the next keyframe needs to be lower. So we're gonna barely miss this. Add that keyframe. Be easier if I just made a sound so it goes pop. Or add some. There it goes. So it doesn't go through. Make it lower. There we go. Now I can probably hit them. Alright, here we go. Down low. Into the bush. Into the bush. Turning off the lights. There it goes. You guys saw it, right? I saw it. I saw it. Not the smoothest curves, but it's the idea that counts. Usually I'd make these like a little bit more long and gradual. But now you can see you can create like worlds that you go into and different ideas you go into. And this might be another way of creating a linear narrative that you guide people through. They don't have to have presence. They can have interactivity maybe. And they can walk through these or float through these trigger collision boxes, and then things can be unveiled to them. All right. So that's something you'll see in a lot of pieces. Fortunately, when I was going to choose for you, actually, they got popular and they just started charging. So we'll have to find another Rails experience for you guys to watch so you can see how it's done other things. But in general, this is a roller coaster. This is just a ride. But we have controllers now where we can poke and stab and grab and throw, and you can see how it kind of goes forward in a nonlinear edited manner. Yeah.